I am super, super, super excited to do this one. I've seen this one before. This is not like a raw react, but I got so excited about the level of musicianship on display in this performance, and I can't wait to break it down. It's just super exciting. Let's get right into it. Okay, there's a lot to talk about here, so we're going to talk about it. The most wonderful thing about this whole phrasing that he does while he's looping, and we're going to get into the challenges of looping for sure. We're going to talk about that. But let's just talk about the idea and why it's so cool. He's going through the chords in an a cappella fashion, but one of the really neat phrasing things are those little slides. They're called portamentos. I guess portamenti if they're Italian. I don't know. Whatever. The point is those little slides are really cool. Now let's talk about the challenges of this. If this is a live performance, if he is off at all on any of this, it's looping and it will show. He basically is all in for every take. Everything is single one take. If he messes up, he basically has to scrap the whole loop and start over from scratch. And this is a live performance. The confidence in your intonation has to be just a certain level of competency, because without that, you're screwed. The other thing is that those little slides, those little portamento things, that's also really hard to tune. And your timing has to be incredibly consistent. I mean, just go try and record yourself on Audacity and time slidings together. It's not like you can't just do, okay, quarter note, we're going to slide. Connecting those slides, that takes an intuition of timing that is just an insanely high level. And it's really hard to overstate just how impressive that is. Well, let's move on though. Right here. Also the mic technique, by the way. Managing the levels of the mic technique, or by using the mic technique, farther away it's less loud, etc., etc. So he had to do all of that. Crazy. Wonderful falsetto. And I love the vowels here, right? So one of the things that high notes love is they love brighter vowels, but then when you get lower, if your mouth is too wide open, you lose a lot of resonance on the low notes. And one of the things I love about R&B, I don't know if this would qualify it as R&B, it's kind of its own thing aesthetically, but I think R&B is just about as nuanced as you can get in terms of delivering tone. And there's going to be a lot of that in this video. Just look at the vowels and how they sound. Let's listen to it again.
When I'm weary and so worn out.
Incredible use of vowels to shape a sound. And the smoothness in the delivery of that phrasing takes immaculate breath control and command over your body so that you're not tight. If you're tight or you contract something just like spontaneously, it'll throw that off. The more delicate you are in the sound that you make, the more you are susceptible to screwing that up with any little contraction of the body. It's going to be audible immediately. This takes a lot of breath control.
My mind's clouded and filled with doubt.
I hate to stop it so much, but like this little phrase right here. That is I think it's I actually would like took the time to actually figure this out. I'm pretty sure that is a 7th chord in second inversion. So the way that chords work is if you do, we can use do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Okay, that's just a scale, right? Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. If you stack thirds, do, mi, so, ti, and you get 4 of them, that interval between do and ti is 7 intervals. So that's why they call it a 7th chord. So do, mi, so, ti. All right. Now you can do that with re, fa, la, do, etc., etc. You can just kind of go up and stack in thirds as you go up. Where I think a lot of people don't really prepare themselves musically is to do what is called an inversion. So if it's do, mi, so, and you put mi on the bottom of that, so it's mi, do, so, ti, or any permutation, you get basically a first inversion. But what's cool about a second inversion, when you make a second inversion chord, usually 2 notes are right next to each other. So second inversion 7th chords have a really, really cool dynamic. And he uses that to make it kind of like a little, a second inversion 7th chord is not like a stable thing. And it pushes the melody line forward. It gives you tension that you want to hear more of.
That's when I feel the most alive.
And I love that he brings that loop back. I love it. I think it's extraordinary. There are very few artists that use a looper in an interesting way. Usually people just do like they make a backing track by just looping and then they work over it. And that is not that interesting. Because then you're just like repeating 4 chords over and over and over again. And it's not that different. This is using a looper in a way that I don't see a lot of musicians use, which is they bring it back in a very subtle way. It becomes one part of the music, but not entirely the song.
With doubt, that's when I feel the most masochistic.
See what I'm saying? Like, it sounds like it really belongs there. And that's great songwriting. I imagine he wrote the song first and then added that introduction. He definitely put, and I think correct me if I'm wrong, I think in the comments below, I think the pronouns are he, him. So anyway, I always try to be on that. It's a little difficult for my old brain, but I'm trying to work on it. But the songwriting being the focal point, I mean, again, just the musicianship of Moses Sumney here is just right on.
Kisses how I thrive.
And I just, hold on. I love all the brass sections, all the musicianship, all the musicians he's working with are extraordinary. But just take a look at how he like little pokes those little notes on the keyboard right there. Just add a little subtle effect. Look at his hand. That's incredible to me because it's just this little flick of that. The control that you have to hit everything. It's not like he put his hands out and did like something like slick like that. He just dip, dip, dip. They just banged it. He just banged it out and he hit every note. Technically, that's impressive, I think. I love the stillness of his posture to allow the attention to go to the musicians that he's working with. It's also worth pointing out that the arrangement is incredibly, incredibly sparse, right? There's not a lot going on. And that allows him to do a lot more with his voice and it fits the piece, right? Like if you have a bunch of stuff going on and then you're using your voice to do all these crazy runs, it can get a little chaotic and it doesn't feel like it musically fits in. But because the arrangement is so sparse, it's so stripped down, it makes those runs seem totally appropriate.
A stiffness inside my neck and begin my head.
We go from legato singing, very smooth and graceful, and now he's bringing in the consonants in this rhythmic way, and you can tell he feels it. He's internalized the rhythm.
A stiffness.
If you want to do pop, this is such a prerequisite. If you want to do anything that has any pop anything, your rhythm has to be spot on. And it's something that a lot of singers never practice. They'll never put on a metronome, or they won't practice beatboxing or rapping. They ignore rhythm. And if you don't do that in pop, goodbye. Like, that's not pop anymore.
Inside my neck and begin my head against the desk. If there's no pain, is there any progress?
The way he transfers vocal weight, the way that he goes in between this, thicker sound and a lighter sound, and he does it all with perfect intention, right? It's totally on purpose and musically intentional to move that weight around on the voice.
And begin my head
A little thicker.
against the desk. If there's no pain.
And then he does that run, lightens it up. You need to lighten it up when you want to go that fast. The folds can't be super thick together. They got to be light so that they're mobile.
Is there any progress?
And I love the way he shapes that phrase using the vowels. Listen to that again. See how he ties it off with the round, more like kissable lips? Your sound becomes way smoother when you do that. And so he's just, I'm not sure what the notes are, but like the way that sound ties off, it's treating runs as not a bunch of notes, but as a musical phrase.
That's when I feel.
And he uses that more pursed lips when he goes into that falsetto to make sure that it's not overly bright. I love he brings that loop back in such a subtle, respectful way. It's really cool songwriting there. I also love this little vocal fry he does on the top. Right? That creamy falsetto, that really smooth falsetto that he has. He's contrasting, and contrasting is always a good idea in art. You do something that's one way and then you do it dramatically different. It's always a dramatic choice. And doing that little vocal fry on the top is, if you are inexperienced, dangerous. A vocal fry is basically the folds going like just kind of like flopping together. In their low end, it's not so bad, because even though that's kind of like an aggressive thing to do with the folds, they're not in the lower note. It's not happening that much, right? Because the more you go up higher, the faster the vocal folds are what's called oscillating, coming together and coming apart. So when you do it higher, that happens more often, and so it's a recipe possibly for vocal damage. But the reason why it's okay here, even though it's slightly an inefficient way to sing, the trade-off is worth it for the artistic decision, but then also the reason why it doesn't hurt him, unbelievably good breath control. High notes need less air, and when you're frying, you need even less than that. So really, really cool, especially because when you do falsetto, more air escapes. So it's actually kind of easier to use more air in falsetto, but he doesn't do that because he knows what's coming next. Really, really intelligent stuff. just, you know, putting all of it aside, what a beautiful voice, right? Just what a beautiful sound. Technique aside, Moses has just a gorgeous voice.
Might not be healthy for me, but seemingly I need what cuts me.
Again, how spot on is his rhythm? Listen to the horn section, listen to the drums. That is tight. That is hard to do as a group, to be that tight.
What cuts me. I guess I'm a true immigrant son. No vacancies, no vacations.
I love how he's not pushing his low there.
No vacancies, no vacations.
It's really hard when you're at the bottom of your range to make it stick out. And so what he's doing here is he makes the whole phrase super light, and he's not pushing his low. If your low notes can take a lot more air, but it's usually not a good idea because you're going to morph the vowel in a weird way. The body always responds to excess air. Your palate's going to droop. It's going to sound a little nasally, and probably is going to go flat because the tongue is going to go back, put pressure on the larynx. A bunch of stuff is going to happen if you put too much air. And so the way he ties it off is nice because you hear the low note, but then he also puts the high notes previous to his, like, the notes that come before that really low note are light. And so that makes it easier to make the phrase consistent.
No vacancies, no vacations.
You see what I'm saying?
Sure, I can do better than this.
And the reason why that sounds luscious is because he's not pushing too much air. And his tongue, if you look at his tongue for the whole performance, incredibly relaxed, wide, and forward. And if you just swallow, you can feel how your tongue is just so forward. Because to swallow, you have to move it. It has to relax. So after you swallow, just let it sit there. And that's where your tongue should be the whole time. And that's what his tongue is doing. And it's easier said than done because if ever your air is excessively high in breath pressure, if you're putting too much out there, tongue is going to go back. That's just going to happen because that's your body trying to protect you. So,
but I won't,
So putting all that style and good performance juju aside, the difficulty of this phrase while he's playing the piano is he's swiping like that. The danger when he's that high in that he might go flat or the note might lose its consistency is if he like twists too much to grab at the keyboard. It's just a really high note, and high notes are very sensitive to breath pressure. So you'd hear it if he ruined his posture to do that thing, that sliding thing on the keyboard. But look at how square his shoulders are.
Sure, I can do better than this, but I won't
Look at this. He's not tight, but his posture is just perfectly energized. Look at how the back of his neck is really tall. The shoulders are wide. I mean, the posture is immaculate. One of, I think, the biggest things in vocal technique is just good posture. You know, your breath and your tongue and all these other things can start being misaligned and start like working against you if your posture is not right. It's something that it's really hard to communicate the importance of that. And whenever I'm trying to help people, that's usually what I'm trying to help them with. And I think it's underappreciated. Like, you need good posture. And it can't be like this. That's not good posture.
What cuts me, cuts me, cut me, cut me, cut me, cut me.
Putting emphasis on K's and any vowel where the breath pressure is, or sorry, any consonant where the breath pressure is going to build up is not going to work in every instance, in every use case. Because you can even do this. Build up that K. You feel that pressure in your throat. That's not good. That's not conducive to singing. But who says we have to do everything efficiently all the time? He's putting that cut, that emphasis on that consonant, but he's in a range where it's not hard to sing on pitch. You know, you don't need to be totally efficient in your speaking range. You can be expressive. And so that's kind of what he's doing there. And I think it's really smart.
Cut me, cut me, cut me, cut me. That's when I feel the most alive. Is when I think I won't survive. Injure, cut me, cut me, cut me. Oh, that's when I feel the most alive. Is when I think I won't survive. Injure, cut me, you cut me. It's when I feel that most real.
I love his performance, like chops. You know, there are a lot of singers, and I won't name names, but there are a lot of singers who give too much too early. You got a whole song to work with, and you have to have an arc. You have to build an intensity. And the way that Moses Sumney builds that intensity and just brings it at the, you know, the golden, like the 3/4 rule, the golden rule, you know, like where you generally want your apex and your climax to be, it's perfect timing.
What cuts me, cuts me, cut me, cut me, cut me, cut me. That's when I feel the most alive.
And it's also important to mention that the instrumentation here gets really thick, right? Everyone's bringing in a lot of sound. Every musician, not just him, right?
Is when I think I won't survive. Injure, cut me, cut me, cut me. Oh, that's when I feel the most alive. It's when I think I won't survive. Injure, cut me, you cut me.
It's really tough to do staccato, like where you're stop, hoo, 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 hoo. Like he's putting the aspirates in there. That does help when you have a little aspirate, because what that does is it blows your folds apart and then they have to come together. And usually when you do that, it's a way more gentle way to come up there. And so the hoo, hoo, hoo is really conducive to that, but it's still really hard to make that stuff on pitch. And he's almost perfect. Wonderful ending, decrescendo, you know, from loud to soft. But I just want to point out, like the on the falsetto, that really bright vowel is actually kind of metal. This is done a lot in like more old school metal or power metal, where you're going really, really, really ridiculously high. It's way more of a falsetto mix. But that brightness kind of gives it this real steely edge that isn't quite like a pure falsetto. That's metal AF. I love it. That's just stellar.